Iraq, it was no real surprise that Iraq was a very big part of last night's State of the Union address. So how are veterans of the war reacting this morning? Christian Baggy was a staff sergeant in the Army when he lost both of his legs in a roadside bombing. You might remember his jog with the president back in June. Captain Rose Forrest served in the Anbar province with the National Guard. Right now she's pregnant. She could be called back to Iraq, though. And Captain Scott Stanford also served in Anbar, first as a platoon leader, later as a company commander with the National Guard. He's still serving with the National Guard. Good morning to all of you. Thanks for talking with us. Let's begin with you, Rose, if we can. First and foremost, what did you think of the president's speech?
Well, Soledad, a year ago I watched the president's State of the Union address from Iraq, and it seemed to me that he promised us that he was going to bring us all home. And this year he seemed that, he was encouraging not only an escalation, but a continuation long-term of troops in Iraq. And I don't think that he justified it in his speech.
What do you think, Christian? Do you think the president was able to make his case?
Well, the thing that was convincing to me, and I spoke earlier before that I opposed the troop surge, but he did kind of plead and say, give us one more chance. And, I really want to. I want it to work. I want to try. But at the same time, I kind of agree with, I do agree with Senator Barack Obama that maybe we ought to be moving the opposite direction. Maybe we ought to pull our people out, put a little pressure on the Iraqi government, and let them stand up for themselves. But, I want to give it a shot.
You want to give it a shot, but you don't sound completely convinced, Christian. I should mention that videotape we just saw a moment ago was you jogging with the president, very famous. Before I let you answer that question, let's ask Scott to weigh in, too. Overall, Scott, what did you think of the president's speech?
Well, I don't think he covered any new ground. I mean, he's talking about an escalation of a failed policy, really not a new policy. He mentioned supporting the troops that are in the field and those on their way. What he didn't mention, I had hoped to hear from him, was something about supporting the 1.6 million veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan that are still troops and still need support. As far as the surge itself is concerned, I think if an officer as well regarded as General Petraeus supports it, then any serious person needs to weigh it on its merits. But I haven't heard where, the question that I'm really looking to be answered is, this hinges a lot on what Nouri al-Maliki and the Iraqi army is able to do. If they don't do what we're asking them to do, then what?
Yeah, and that's a very big then what question there. Rose, let's get back to you for just a moment. A lot of people have said, a lot of analysts have said that even though half the speech really was about domestic issues, it's Iraq that's going to overshadow everything. Is that the case for you personally as you watch a speech like State of the Union? Are you really just listening for Iraq and that's going to make your decision on everything else that the president says?
For me it is, just because, as you mentioned before, I am concerned that I'm going back. Also, my little brother just joined the Army not long ago, and he'll be going to basic training, and I know that he'll be going to Iraq, so it's very important to me.
Okay, let me ask you about your brother then. Do you have you sound not behind the president's plan at all, and now your little brother's kind of gone and signed up. What kind of conversations did you have with him?
Well, I support him going into the military. I love being in the Army, and I love that I have served. I do question some of the president's plans. Last night in his address, he mentioned that we just need to, find the terrorists and clear them out. And I'm sure, as Scott will say, it's not as easy as it sounds. It's also not addressing a lot of the socioeconomic problems that are in Iraq that can't be solved with military force.
Christian, with the final word to you this morning, do you think that we just didn't hear the president say it, or do you think it's not there, some of the things that Rose just raised?
I don't know. I think it's not there, like I said before, I wanted to touch on that point. I'm so torn, like many Americans. We want it to work, but we don't necessarily support the troop surge. And so many of us are torn. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to think. Unfortunately, the administration has lost quite a bit of credibility with the whole Iraq debacle. And so, I want to succeed. We all want to succeed, but I don't have the answers, unfortunately. But I'll certainly be willing to hear from someone who does.
It's quite a dire assessment from all three of you, Christian Baggy and Captain Rose Forrest and Captain Scott Stanford. Thanks to the three of you for talking with us this morning. It's nice to check in with you once again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Soledad.